And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers insider for Lakers Daily, joined today by somebody who I just enjoy talking basketball with. It's like he's just one of the you give off great vibes with somebody who's just like, I would enjoy meeting at a bar, watching a basketball game, having a couple beers, and just like sitting there and just naming basketball players for a couple hours. That just seems like you give off that kind of vibe. Jason Timpf, he is of the Volume. He hosts the show Hoops Tonight. You can find him on Twitter and on YouTube and on really anywhere. One of my absolute favorite guests. Jason, how you doing today?
It's good to see you, man. We might have to make that happen at Summer League. Maybe have a couple beers and watch a game or two. Yeah, I'm excited that I was just talking to you before we went live. Like this playoff run is just a crazy grind one day after the next. But like we're already almost halfway through it. Like last night, I was talking to the team. Last night was our last 10:30 p.m. Eastern start of the year.
Yeah.
We got a few more days of the two games, but then once we go to the conference finals, we got the earlier starts. And then remember last year they moved the NBA final starts up to 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so we won't have to stay up as late anymore. So I started to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, but at the same time, it's fun. This is so much fun, man. And this playoff run has been incredible.
I just can't believe we've reached the point here where we're excited about earlier tip-off times. That we've reached the point of our lives where we're like, oh my God, an extra hour. Like, I was, it was obviously a little bittersweet because it meant that the Lakers were no longer in it. But when I looked and I saw that there were no Pacific Standard Time teams, like there were no West Coast teams in the playoffs anymore, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be a zombie for a little while. At least every so often, that's not going to be the case. But yeah, no, the playoffs have been great. The Lakers have managed to stay interesting despite no longer being in the playoffs.
They have a habit of doing that.
They're just so good at it. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Donovan Mitchell a little bit. Brian Windhorst said that the Lakers have a offer ready to go if and when the time comes to start those conversations. I want to talk to you about what you're looking for in the next Lakers head coach, and also what the Lakers can learn from these playoffs to this point, because I think that'll kind of put a nice tidy bow on both the two previous subjects. But Donovan Mitchell is an interesting player in that he's a smaller guy, but he plays a little bit bigger than his size. He would immediately provide something that the Lakers haven't had, frankly, in the LeBron era, of a defense piercing guard who can also shoot and keep teams, honest on the offensive side of the ball. Some defensive questions or whatever. I did take the liberty of just throwing together at least the contracts that the Lakers would probably need to send out in order to bring him in. So this is what it would kind of look like right now. Donovan Mitchell going to the Lakers, Rui, Austin, and Jalen Hood-Schifino, plus all of the picks and all of that stuff as well. So he would really kind of gut the Lakers' depth if the Lakers did try to trade for him. What are your thoughts about that direction and what that would mean for the Lakers if they did head in this direction, which, by the way, they have been looking at for all of the Trae Young noise? I've actually heard that they've had more confidence in Donovan Mitchell dating back to the deadline.
Wow, that's crazy. I figured that the because of the clutch connections, they'd be kind of leaning more towards that Trae Young direction.
Too. I was kind of surprised to find it out. Yeah.
So I here's the thing. It's always difficult when you start talking about the pieces that are going out because, like, for instance, Rui Hachimura, vitally important part of the turnaround this season, moving him into the starting lineup and just him kind of engaging in the 5-out offense as this guy who was a reliable 3-point shooter and also a really smart cutter who had great chemistry with D'Lo and LeBron and all that stuff. And then obviously Austin Reeves is one of my favorite players that I've ever rooted for. The dude is just such a competitor and always the best way I could describe Austin, he's just a gamer. Like I always felt like in a big game that Austin was going to show up and find a way to make plays, right? So it would be hard, but you just can't pass up on an opportunity to add a talent like Donovan Mitchell. The specifics that I think that you brought up that are really important, that combination of dribble penetration and pull-up shooting,
Yeah.
One of the things that Donovan Mitchell demonstrated in this Celtics series is like he's really difficult to guard and pick and roll. There just aren't that many defenders that can stay attached consistently over the top of screens, and there aren't that many screen defenders that can navigate that combination of speed and pull-up shooting when they come up to the level, right? And so like he can just do a lot of damage there. I also think like it's gone a little bit under the radar in this playoff run because his workload has been so big. But Donovan Mitchell just had the best defensive season of his career. And there is specifically one of the things that I thought Donovan Mitchell was really good at was like dig down and close out type of situations where like he'd be on, they usually tuck him on one of the least aggressive perimeter players on the other team. And he would be able to get down into the lane and swipe down at the basketball, but he has the speed to get back out to a shooter and to get a really good closeout. And I think that playing on a LeBron James and Anthony Davis team would give him some it would give him a different workload in the sense offensively that I think he'd be able to be more impactful defensively in a playoff setting. I think also there's a case to be made that like if you send Austin Reeves out in a trade, it gives you some leverage to at least talk to D'Angelo Russell about like, hey man, there's a role for you here. Whether it's this, kind of fifth starter piece or if it's more of like a come off the bench, kind of sixth man type of thing. I think we have to look at Jared Vanderbilt too, in terms of like the gutting of the roster. Guys like having Jared Vanderbilt for an entire season would be of great value. Having a Gabe Vincent for an entire season. Those are two players that are like kind of like fifth starter level type talents that could come in and fill in a lot of those roles. Like, yeah, it'd be hard to give up those pieces. But at the same time, like I do see there is some redundancy in terms of Rui and LeBron playing together. I think we saw that in the Denver series as Rui just could not handle the Michael Porter Jr. assignment towards the tail end of that towards the tail end of that series. But it's because that's something that traditionally his position hasn't had to deal with, and yet he had to because he plays the same position as LeBron. So like I will say I'm a little skeptical just in the sense that it's hard for me to imagine Dan Gilbert being like, here you go, LeBron.
I just saw a tweet about that. I'm like,
well, yeah. Like here's the Donovan Mitchell for you. And then the second piece of it is like Donovan Mitchell just had his like most impressive playoff run, probably given the degree of difficulty and just the level of shot making he demonstrated. And so I have a feeling that there's just going to be a bidding war. And I just have a feeling someone else is going to get involved and be able to poach him. I mean, obviously you and I both know there can be work done behind the scenes in terms of kind of manipulating the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm skeptical.
Yeah, the concern that I have with Donovan, he's clearly an upgrade. He would immediately become the Lakers' third best player in a very, very clear way. That like I also like Austin. I also consider him a gamer. I was kind of chuckling as you were saying that because that's how I've described him all season. But I don't think he can be the third best player on a championship caliber team. Donovan Mitchell very easily could be. I would if I were the Lakers there, I would try like hell to try to keep Austin out of it. But at the same time, also there, if you're gonna have Austin, like they can't lose D'Lo for nothing. He knows that. He basically announced it right after the season ended. Was like, yeah, I know I have some leverage going into the season with that player option. His camp knew that they were what they were signing up for and why they signed that type of deal. They turned down a bigger money contract basically when they agreed to terms on the deal that he eventually signed. So he knows it. I'd be a little nervous about D'Angelo Russell and Donovan Mitchell being on the same team next year because I think you're going to run into a version of the same. They're more talented, but it's a version of the same issue that they had this year, right? Where neither of those guys can guard the best perimeter player on the other team in a way that doesn't terrify you on a nightly basis. So I don't know. I've been of the mind that if you're going to move Austin, if you're going to move Rui, if you're gonna like completely crater your depth, I would hope that you get somebody who is a bona fide two-way, impact player. And Mitchell is closer because of the defense that he played this year. I wish it was a wing. Like I would much rather, I don't think you need to move as much stuff to get Mikal Bridges as you would with Mitchell. Mitchell, it's going to take everything. It's going to like everything that isn't tied down, and you're going to have to take a box cutters to some of those ropes. to see if you can get Mitchell. And I just don't know if that sets up the Lakers, not just now, but also moving forward post LeBron. You have no assets to work with. So it's Mitchell and AD and nothing around them, no first rounders, no nothing to build with them. I don't know how that necessarily leaves them. And that's kind of the other part of this. Like they're talking, I saw a description of the head coach that they're looking for, right? Is somebody who can get the most out of LeBron and AD right now, but then also develop with a young team after LeBron leaves. It's like, you're talking about one of the greatest coaches in the history of the sport. If somebody
exactly.
can do both, no big deal there. No, good luck, JJ. But like in carving out their depth for whatever third star it is, whether it was Trey, whether it's Mitchell, whether it's whoever, I don't know if the Lakers have a viable path to competing for a championship next year with a 40-year-old LeBron and a year 13 AD and a whole bunch of minimum contracts. And then on the other side of that, you have no way to kind of rebound after this run. Does that matter at all to you though? Like if you're managing this era of the LeBron and AD Lakers chapter or whatever, does it matter to you at all what the other side of going all in might look like?
So specifically, I think one of the things that helps in this circumstance is like if Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent can be healthy, those are two really good basketball players that you probably would not have to include in a deal like that. So like it wouldn't just be veteran minimums. It would be LeBron, AD, whoever this third star is. And then you also have these two really high level kind of like fifth or sixth best player on a team type guys. Also, I think like Max Christie's another, that was what I was just going to say, like another year of experience for Max Christie where he's in a situation where he doesn't have a coach that's just completely obsessed with Cam Reddish. And here's the thing, like I disagree with most Laker fans in the sense that I don't think Max Christie was some magic elixir that would have pushed the Lakers over the top. But every minute that Cam Reddish played should have gone to Max. There's no doubt. He's just a better basketball player, better prospect. That's what should have happened, right? So like, yeah, I think that having that next year would help. As far as like the like what happens after, my thing is like, I actually do think the Lakers are closer than people think, or at least they were this season. Where it gets tricky is another 12 months of LeBron James aging. That gets really tricky. But I thought LeBron and AD were both top 10 players in the league this year. And I thought the issue was there wasn't enough talent around them. It really was that simple. They met the fight. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, LeBron and AD talked a bunch of trash at media day about how they wanted to play Denver again. LeBron and AD cashed the checks they wrote. They went into that series and they played really, really well. It was basically a down the roster outclassing that cost them at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And like I could point to so many like specific sequences, like even just Rui, just how bad he was in Game 5. If Rui plays 10% better in Game 5, the Lakers push that to 6, just by hitting an additional 3, finishing around the basket a time you would have missed. That crucial mistake on Michael Porter Jr. in the fourth quarter, like he just wasn't very good. And so I think that I'm a big believer in push your chips in. Also, I think that you can do a pretty decent job of recouping assets within 1 or 2 bad seasons if you're well run, just by taking on bad contracts. It's like the short tank, where it's like you just are bad for a year or two, and then you can all of a sudden kind of recoup. Like the Warriors basically did that, in 2020 and 2021. So like I'm not as like worried about what life after some sort of all-in move would look like, just because I think any well-run organization can recoup things pretty quickly. And you have like, what would you rather have? Like 1 or 2 final really meaningful runs at it with LeBron and AD, and then 1 or 2 ugly seasons while you pivot after? Or would you rather have 4 mediocre seasons? Because that really is the alternative. There is no other foundation here. Like if you pivot to building around AD, you still end up needing some sort of high-powered offensive player to help him in the phase after, which is, by the way, the upside of a Donovan Mitchell type of trade is like LeBron ages out, you re-up with Don, you have at least Don and AD, and you can kind of reconfigure around that. So like, I think they have to look at all options this summer to make one last go at it. the version of it that you pitched with Mikal Bridges, I've thought about this in a couple of different ways. This is kind of like Minnesota is giving Denver issues with size. Why don't we lean more into size kind of thing? And there are a bunch of different variations of that, whether it's Mikal Bridges or a Dorian Finney-Smith, or if it's a Jeremy Grant, if it's a Kyle Kuzma, like that sort of thing. If they target some sort of big forward, I like that move too, just simply because I do believe in Austin Reeves. But I think if you go for that type of player, if you go for a Mikal Bridges, if you go for a Jeremy Grant, then I think you have to keep Austin, because at a certain point, I think you need that skill guard piece, the guy that can consistently run ball screens with LeBron and AD and not get a switch. Because I think, again, any sort of big forward like a Mikal Bridges or a Jeremy Grant, any sort of two-man game with them or LeBron and AD is just going to end in a switch, which, as you and I both know, was one of the bigger weaknesses for the Lakers all season. Switching schemes, they'd get stagnant, and unless LeBron and AD really felt like playing bully ball, they would kind of fall apart offensively. And so I think you just kind of have to tweak what you're willing to give out if you go after a forward.
Yeah, I think I don't think, well, the Nets have been so stubborn with Bridges that you might just it might turn out just like it did with the Hawks last year, where the Lakers and Hawks just stopped negotiating because the Hawks were adamant they wanted Reeves and the Lakers were adamant they didn't want to include Reeves. And then those talks just kind of broke down. And honestly, I think that's what the Lakers are going to run into a lot this offseason. Reeves is the first guy every smart team is going to ask for, in any negotiation for any kind of an upgrade for the Lakers. And, they've been very unwilling to even listen to conversations that mention Reeves. So I'm really kind of curious how that goes and what type of draft capital they're willing to give up to keep Reeves in that case. And also, like, to answer my own question from a little bit ago, I also think that you have LeBron, you have AD, you owe it to those guys. You honestly owe it to the sport to go all in, give them one more shot at it. It's what you did with Kobe. It's what every, and like that attempt at it resonates beyond just LeBron and just Anthony Davis, right? It's for every superstar who would think about playing for the Lakers. If you kind of try to sidestep this and straddle that fence and hold on to an extra first round pick for after LeBron, every potential future superstar is going to look at me like, oh, well, they aren't going to meet me halfway, because LeBron and AD, like you just said, 2 top 10 players last year. LeBron has managed to fight off Father Time in ways we've literally never seen in the sport. You owe it to him. He's met you halfway. You got to give up whatever it takes to give him one more chance here in the last couple of years of his career.
Well, part of that though is like he like at a minimum, as long as he doesn't suffer a serious injury. Like we saw a hobbled version of him last year in the playoffs, still be like a 25, 10 and 8 kind of guy. Right. So like, the floor with LeBron is so high because of his size and basketball IQ that like, even if you saw a 10% decline in his production next year, he's still just like a top 15 NBA player, which is like a real weapon to have when you get into the postseason. And one last quick note on that, like, how do you factor in the mid-level exception in terms of this discussion? Because like, what if you go after the guard and then you can get someone like a Tobias Harris at the MLE, and then all of a sudden you have a guy like, again, Tobias Harris can be a frustrating basketball player when you're leaning on him as your third shot creator.
When he's making $40 million bucks, like
if he's making $40 million bucks and he's the guy, and he's the number 3 after Tyrese and Joel Embiid, that'll be frustrating. But like, if he's legitimately the 5th best player in a lineup and he's like a big forward, like and he's just more of like a threat than a Jared Vanderbilt is, and you can like that would be my kind of like counterpoint too, is you're not just having Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt waiting to rejoin the roster. You also have that MLE slot. And again, they've botched that the last 3 years, but there's a chance that's
how I was going to respond. I was like, ideally, it sounds great, but they haven't been very good at it. Yeah.
And I'll also, don't Tobias and LeBron have a little bit of beef in the past, but I have a feeling they could get over that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Tobias, and just like every, really, really talented player, at least for 1 year, you're trying to, so basically like with the Warriors, whatever voodoo magic they worked that got Andrew Wiggins to focus on the small things, They got Otto Porter to stay healthy somehow, and they won their championship because they had really, really, really talented players focusing on things that were kind of sort of beneath their talent, and doing those little things. And that's honestly something that the Lakers have really missed. They've tried to do that. They've tried to go out and get, bigger name players on the back end of their careers to see if they could focus on those little things. And they just haven't had the culture, I think, to actually get those players to focus on those things. That's what Cam was supposed to be. And he was that for about a couple weeks, I would say. And then he realized, oh yeah, that's right. I'm playing for a contract. I have to knock down shots too. And then it all went to kind of hell. But yeah, I think I think that MLE and bringing back Max and seeing what you actually have in him, and then getting anything whatsoever, because obviously Gabe is the example of the player that the Lakers got zero from this year. So if you get anything from him, you're in a better spot. And then Vanderbilt, you only got about a couple weeks or so of good Vando play before he got hurt again. So maybe that kind of bridges that gap too. And yeah, I guess we'll kind of, see how that works out. Big part of this, though, is getting the right head coach to make it all work. And that's going to be the thing that the Lakers, that's the box that needs to be checked first before we even get to all of the roster and personnel stuff. If I had to guess, I think it's JJ. The fact that they brought in Coach K and that like the second most popular candidate is James Borrego. Nothing against Borrego or anything like that, but I think they've made some of the other candidates a little less impressive to kind of
on purpose.
JJ a little bit. Yeah.
It's either JJ or this guy. What do you guys want?
Borrego's like, what the hell? So if I had to guess, I would say it's probably going to be JJ. I said this yesterday to Jovan on the show. I've said it a few times on the show. The way it's been described to me is if and when they hire or when they interview JJ, they are basically hoping to be impressed. And if there was one thing that I knew JJ was going to be able to do, it's nail an interview. It's why his content is so good. It's why he has this opportunity in the first place. So I think it's going to be JJ. But like him aside, or him specifically, or other specific candidates aside, what's the number one thing that you were looking for? We know what the Lakers are looking for. They're looking for Jesus Christ reincarnate. But like, what are you looking for from the next head coach of the Lakers?
I want active coaching. I want active accountability based coaching. I think that there's a lot that we get hung up on a lot of different things, like, okay, offensive schematics, for instance, or defensive schematics. And it's like really so much of that is read and react over the course of a game. You can set a base scheme, but really a lot of times, like a help and recover decision is on the help defender. A lot of times the pick and roll coverage comes down to AD's instincts and how high he feels like he wants to come up versus how high he actually comes up, right? Like there's all these different elements that I think fall to the talent, right? I think like scouting can only carry you so far, right? And like obviously you want them to work behind the scenes to do their due diligence to prepare the players for success and all that. But to me, the number one difference between what the Lakers have been since the championship season, really since the 2021 season, I would say, the main difference between those two teams and the last two teams, in my opinion, has been just the level of urgency on a day-to-day basis in the regular season. Yep. I remember earlier this season, I did a bit on my show where it's like, yeah, there have been teams that have had mediocre regular seasons that have flipped the switch and made noise in the playoffs. There has never in NBA history been a team, except for a defending champion, that chilled during the regular season and then flipped the switch and won the title. It has literally never happened. So like that is a dead on arrival strategy, in my opinion. Not to mention the Lakers just simply don't have that type of talent. Like what the Lakers need is they need to strike lightning in a bottle, in the sense that they need to be playing incredibly good basketball at the right time. And the only way that's going to happen is if they practice playing incredibly good basketball from October all the way through. And so I've been blown away. It was so jarring to me to watch the difference in disposition on the sideline between Michael Malone in that Denver series and Darvin Ham.
Yeah.
And like there is Michael Malone is active. He's out on the floor. He's getting on their case about every little thing they're doing right and wrong. He's the minute there's 2 or 3 possessions where they let go of the rope, it's not just a timeout, it's a timeout, and he's yelling at them. And it's like there's a level of accountability and urgency and value to every single bit and piece of what makes a basketball team with Michael Malone. And I think that's what they need. And so when it comes to the JJ Redick piece, I think too much is made of the experience. It's kind of like the NFL, the old NFL kind of trope where it's like, yeah, this is a great coordinator, but he can't be a head coach kind of thing. Like there are a lot of really talented and experienced. Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of really talented and experienced assistants that don't make good head coaches. Really, a lot of it comes down to talent, natural ability. And JJ either has that or he doesn't. My thing is like, is he going to be an active coach? Is he going to be that guy that on a possession by possession basis is out there actively coaching the team, holding them accountable? The last thing I'll say about it is Michael Malone had a quote. I'll actually pull it up real quick. He had a quote yesterday before the game. He said, yeah, you make adjustments. Sometimes I think too much is made of adjustments. It's not really what you're doing. It's how you do it. And to me, if you look at us in games 1 and 2 compared to game 3 and 4, our players had a completely different disposition about themselves. And like, that's the thing. Like we like to pretend like it's like, oh, there's this magic adjustment that you make and then the series turns around. But it's like, really, it's the coach that gets his guys to most frequently do all of the fundamental things in basketball. It's like that is what usually makes the biggest difference. Like Denver, for all of the talk about their basketball IQ and all these different schematic things that they do, they run hard, they screen hard, they defend, they fly around in rotation, they crack down, rebound. They just are a really, really good basketball team. And I think that reflects well on Michael Malone. And so that would be my number one thing is I just want a coach that on a possession by possession basis, on a practice by practice basis, on a game by game basis is just like literally just on these guys about playing the right way so that when we get to the conference quarterfinals, we don't have 7-8 possession stretches where we pee down our leg and fall apart. Like that just can't happen anymore. And like that there is something to be said about like that attention to detail being the main differentiator between the Lakers and Denver this year.
Yeah. Honestly, to kind of fully encapsulate that, I'm just hoping to look forward to next year and not have so many possessions on either side of the ball where guys are like talking to each other. No, you were supposed to. No, wait, you were supposed to. Like that organization and that understanding and the lack thereof that the Lakers showed all season at every circumstance. Like you could find any kind of circumstance that they faced this year, and there was probably an example of them looking unorganized in it, right? And for Anthony Davis, who like ask anybody who spends any time around the guy. He is one of the nicest people. He's a dog. He will compete his ass off, but he's an incredibly nice person. For him to say on at least, I think, 2 occasions, we don't know what we're doing about his head coach. Like he's not that kind of a guy. He doesn't normally offer up those quotes, but he also, you could see it when the defense is not operating at the level that he wants it to, or when other players are putting him in impossible situations, that really eats at him. And I thought all year, the last couple of years, you would see, even when the Lakers made their run in the playoffs last year, you would still see moments where you're like, all right, I don't think are they in zone? Do they know that they're in zone? Does he know that they're in zone? Like it's like, and it was just, whoever their next head coach is. And I think I would even go, no, I won't go when, but if they hire JJ, I do think, they'll probably take a more active role in helping him find assistant coaches. There's a possibility, I guess, that Chauncey Billups might be out in Portland. Wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers go and try and get him to kind of fill that Jason Kidd role, that he filled with Frank Vogel. Wouldn't surprise me, given how LeBron feels about Jared Dudley, if the Lakers went and tried to poach him away from Dallas too. Like just and then obviously they need an X's and O's person. They need a defensive actual strategist to help with all of this stuff. Most head coaches in all of sports, though, are mostly just CEOs. And their job is to just kind of like calm everybody down, delegate as needed, and communicate their vision out to the rest of the team. And that's the part of it that, in doing the amount of reporting that I did about like the way that guys felt about Darvin this year, the number one thing that frustrated them with him was every time out, it was run faster, dribble harder, grittier. And they were like, well, can we have a basketball? Like, can we have a basketball? Can we talk basketball here? Because basketball play, like NBA players, they know ball too. Like, they know what it looks like when a coach is in over their head. And in this case, I think with JJ, and the other thing too about JJ specifically is as soon as he walks through that door, he'll have the most important voice in the room in LeBron James on his side and ready to go in ways that I don't even think that Luke had, Vogel had, or even, and certainly Ham didn't have it. And I think that advantage right there is I think the number one reason that I understand experience is a concern. I understand that there's a lot of work around the peripheries to make it work with JJ is going to have to be done. But that factor of getting superstar buy-in or LeBron James's specific buy-in, at least initially, now he could screw it up. Like if he looks like he isn't ready to go, LeBron's going to recognize that pretty quickly. But I would argue in ways that no other coach has had it with the Lakers while LeBron has been there. JJ would have immediate buy-in. You know, the only other guy who would have had it would have been Lou, and that didn't happen. And I think that's a big factor. How is that something that you would take into account here with JJ or anybody?
Yeah, I think anytime you get a new coach, there's usually buy-in that first year. I mean, the Vogel experience was the perfect example of this. Like, just everyone was super locked in, incredible defensive season in 2020. And then 2021, it was like just a little bit of a slipping of the rope. And then 2022, it's like now no one listens to the guy. So like that, some of that is just kind of like the natural progression of things. I think the point you made about Darvin is really interesting in the sense that like I think when the Lakers hired Darvin, they were thinking like Ime Udoka. They were thinking big former player that can kind of look eye to eye with these guys and hold them accountable as like a motivator.
Yeah.
And that became the problem. Was it turns out that Ime Udoka is like a little bit of an a-hole in a good way, in the sense that he will,
it's important in sports.
Really get, he builds toughness in his players by actually being willing to say like, hey, you're sucking right now. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. Like that kind of thing. Right. And I think Darvin was just a bit too benevolent. And so when Darvin was not bringing enough as a motivator, and then he also is not a tactician, that's where you're going to have guys looking at you with the side eye where it's like, what are you really doing for us here? And most importantly, I think players, when players are actually like pouring their heart and soul into things and putting in the work behind the scenes and competing on the floor, they want to know that your staff is doing the same. And so, yeah, you're right. Like you have to be able to bring something of substance to the table there. And if he wasn't being a motivator and he wasn't being a tactician, then effectively he was just, like you said, it's like a figurehead or a CEO, but one that's not providing anything to the equation. And so again, like if there's again, I think with a guy like JJ, you have to go with an experienced staff just because of his lack of experience. But again, I think it's both. Like I do think, by the way, Darvin just being like run harder, all that kind of stuff, that is to me like kind of just empty platitudes. But there is something to be said about like, hey, I watched you on that play. You set a shit screen. You got to do a better job the next time down the floor.
For sure.
That's the only way this is going to work. You know, that kind of like getting on their case about little fundamental things, I do think is important because that's what breeds the value in each individual possession.
It just can't be
but
the
to your
only
point,
thing.
it has to be the tactics as well. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to a timeout. They do those cut-ins with on the sideline there, and the one that I was watching was Dagno, and he was talking to his Thunder, and he was like, nobody's making contact on screens. You guys are driving too slow, and we aren't collapsing the defense. And he had another note there, and I was like, wow, basketball observations. That's insane. They can do that. That's been an option this whole time. Speaking of those playoffs, so is there anything that you would take away from if you're the Lakers or if you're Rob Pelinka and you're watching these playoffs and there's, one major lesson that you need to learn as you embark on the latest, most crucial offseason in recent Lakers history? Is there anything in particular that you would say, yeah, we will not be successful unless we learn this from what we're watching right now.
So I think the Minnesota Denver series has been revealing in a lot of ways where like there's no doubt that Minnesota's size and oppressive physicality caught Denver off guard at first and led to that kind of initial wave as they went up 2-0. But as soon as Denver kind of met their level of physicality, it became abundantly clear like, oh, this team can't score.
Yeah.
So what really like I said before the series that excuse me. I said before the series that I thought Minnesota had roughly the same chance to beat Denver as the Lakers did. And I just got completely shredded for that. And the main reason why is I literally thought to myself, like, yeah, Minnesota's a much better defense and they're going to have a certain amount of success with that defense. But I just have always believed that Minnesota's offense is really bad and that they would eventually be able to figure them out. And they have. Like, they basically figured out now that it's like if you throw the kitchen sink at Ant, these other guys just can't make you pay. Like right. It's literally that simple. And
it's sad to watch. Poor Ant has to dribble like 13 times and he rotates the ball over to Alexander Walker. And it's just like, oh God, we know how this is ending. You could actually see it in Ant's like when he gives up the ball, his shoulders slump because he's like, oh God, it went to Gobert. Damn it.
Yeah, Gobert's trying to post up Jokic now. This is not going to end well. Yeah, it's funny. I had so many Tatum fans in my mentions last night going off about how like, oh, Ant had a bad game. I'm like, are you watching what's happening in this game at all right now? Yeah. And I also want to be like, all 30 NBA GMs would take Ant over Tatum right now, including Brad Stevens. But thank you.
Happily.
So yeah, but anyway, I think it's been interesting in the sense that like I don't think you need to construct your team to beat Denver. I think that there are certain parts of Denver's oppressiveness, physicality that are in physicality that are unbeatable. Like Denver's offense. My guy Carson from Nerd Sesh, he tweeted this out last night, but they had an offensive rating over 127 in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter is you can't guard Denver.
Their clutch offense is just inevitable.
Yeah, and that's not just clutch. That's for 3 full 48-minute games.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So they've made it look easy. And so my thing is like just lean into being the best basketball team that you can be within your identity. So for instance, like the Lakers led the majority of the Nuggets series and gave themselves a legitimate chance to win because they lost 4-1, but 2 games ended at the buzzer. So like literally all you have to do is change 2 plays in either of those games. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's a 3-2 series. Right now, obviously the dynamic would have been different. There would have been a desperate Denver game in there somewhere. I think the chasm was wider than some Lakers fans believe. That said, though, the Lakers competed with Denver in a real way by virtue of the fact that their 5-out offense was really difficult to guard and LeBron James and Anthony Davis were demolishing Denver in the paint, right? So like It was more of an offensive thing. And so like when I look at it from the Lakers perspective, it's like, do you go, oh, Minnesota did this with 2 bigs, let's go into 2 bigs? No, because then you're just going to make yourself easier to guard. And you're going to have the exact same problem when you get to Denver that Minnesota's having right now, which is Jokic is just going to find a way to cut your front court to pieces no matter what you do. And so, like, I look at it as like, what if you had that exact same Lakers series, but instead of Austin Reeves having to guard the ball and Rui Hachimura at the 3, it was Mikal Bridges at the 3, and Mikal Bridges was guarding Jamal Murray. Do you have a better chance to guard Jamal and you get more offensive production and just kind of athletic impact out of Mikal Bridges at the 3? Do you have a better chance to win that series? I believe you do. And so again, like I think that's the big lesson from this is like you just need to be the best version of a basketball team that you can be, meaning like lean into your strengths. Whatever your strengths are, lean into them. Stop trying to cater for a specific opponent, especially a guy like Jokic, because you're just going to lose anyway. Like you could not construct a better roster to slow down the Denver Nuggets. And Denver has ripped through them like Boston's regular season offensive numbers. Like it's completely absurd.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing with Denver is like you also have to kind of hope for a little bit of luck. You have to you have to hope that like they decide to not bring back KCP because he gets, because he's going to be a free agent this year and his number could be astronomical, and maybe they make the same mistake that the Lakers made and they decide that it's not worth it to bring him back. You have to hope that like Jamal Murray misses one of those jumpers one of these days against the Lakers late in the 4th quarter. Like I mean, that's the thing.
He's not going to miss him against Austin though. Like,
yeah, no, that's for sure.
He's a 6'4" below average NBA athlete. Love Austin, but he's not Jaden McDaniels.
Right. Well, and I would even argue with Jamal, it almost doesn't matter who's in front of him. Like, he's that kind of a like clutch performer. Like, in some moments he's just not going to see people, right? Like, Shane Battier was a pretty damn good defender, and I'm not putting Jamal on Kobe's level. Shane Battier was doing everything in his power. Remember, he would put his hand like in Kobe's face for, that one playoff. It took Kobe one game to figure that out. And it didn't matter, and to your point, if you get too hyper focused on stopping Jamal Murray or stopping Jokic or stopping this, you're going to overcorrect and you're going to commit to this other thing when what the Lakers actually need might be over here, and that's kind of the thing with, like, I know that with LeBron, basically they've been looking for another ball handler to make LeBron's life easier, and I think they've overcommitted to that pursuit. That's how you wind up with Dennis Schroeder, and then Russell Westbrook, and then D'Angelo Russell, and then it might be Donovan Mitchell, or it might be Trae Young, right? And that pursuit has really put the Lakers in the desert, wandering around for all of these years, because they've been so hyper focused on that one thing. And I think, one thing that I'm really hoping to find out here. Now, we never hear from Pelinka unless things are going well, but I'd like for the Lakers to identify some type of identity, some type of culture, because that, frankly, like, we could talk about which specific head coach that we want. We could talk about which acquisition that we want, what direction that they take the offense or the defense, whatever. Like, the reason the Lakers have been mediocre in the regular season with LeBron and AD is because there's no culture. There's no identity. It's just how does Rob stay employed? And it's, overcorrection after overcorrection. And until they kind of identify what they're actually trying, like how to sustain success, I think we're just going to be back here next year having the same conversation, and I don't know if that gets fixed this year. But Jason, it's been an absolute blast. It always is, talking basketball with you. You guys can check out Jason's work at The Volume on Hoops Tonight. It's youtube.com/@hoopstonight, right? Is the link?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Great work that he does over there. A ton of great work. You're actually, it's really rare to find, people who cover the league on the whole and not find moments that piss off the local fans as often as possible. Like, my favorite writer all time, he was one of my favorite people, RIP, but Jonathan Tjarks was like this at The Ringer. And the reason that I thought he was so successful is because he would, like, when he was getting ready to write about the Lakers or write about the Clippers or write about whoever, he would reach out to the people who cover that team locally and say, hey, this is a theory I have about this team. What do you think about this? And the number of DMs and texts and just conversations that we'll have about the Lakers, whether it's here or wherever, I know you're having those conversations about those other teams too. And it really shows in the amount of work that goes into your work. And it's really fun to watch, man. It's been absolute blast to watch you take off the way that you have.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. This has been a lot of fun. There's so much Lakers stuff going on this offseason. We gotta chat again when we get into the actual mix of things after the finals.
Absolutely. All right, so that's going to do it here. I do have a starred comment that I guess I got to get to before we get out of here. Brandon Omeng writing, if we got Spida, what's the 5? Spida, Max, Vando, Braun, AD, or put Gabe at the 1 and Spida at the 2. Although it would be too small, I prefer to have Gabe off the bench, and that's if they don't trade him. That's where the mid-level comes in, that we talked about earlier. But the nice thing about Spida, I think, is he allows you to play Vanderbilt. You have enough offense that you can get away with having Vando as a 0 on that side of the ball. But Jason, again, thanks very much for hopping on, man. And yeah, I do look forward to talking to you again here sometime soon.
Yeah, I would imagine that we'll get a hire in a couple of weeks, and then the Lakers, I'm assuming, are going to be making whatever trade they're going to make right around the draft. So this is right around the corner, man. Well, we're about a month away.
Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the rate button, review, all of those good things. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.